The ancient grandfather clock in Rowan Pierce's workshop chimed midnight, its resonant tones echoing through the cramped space filled with timepieces of every description. The 28-year-old clockmaker barely noticed, focused intently on the delicate mechanism before him. His grandmother's ring caught the lamplight as he manipulated tiny gears with practiced precision. "Just a little more," he whispered, making a final adjustment. The pocket watch in his hand suddenly sprang to life, its second hand ticking with perfect rhythm. Rowan smiled, satisfaction warming his chest. He'd spent 3 days restoring the antique timepiece, a wedding anniversary gift from a desperate husband who'd inherited his great-grandfather's broken watch. The ring slipped slightly as he worked, and he automatically pushed it back into place. He'd never taken it off since his grandmother's passing 6 months ago. Her final words still echoed in his memory, "Time isn't what they think it is, Rowan. Promise me you'll keep it safe." He'd assumed she meant the ring itself, a curious piece with shifting patterns that seemed to flow like liquid metal. Now, watching moonlight play across its surface, he wondered if there had been more to her words. A sharp knock at the workshop door startled him from his reverie. Rowan frowned, checking his watch. No customers would come this late. The knock came again, more insistent. "Coming," he called, moving carefully between crowded workbenches. The ring suddenly felt cold against his skin, and the air grew heavy with static electricity. Every timepiece in the workshop began to chime at once, though it was well past midnight. Rowan's hand froze on the doorknob. Through the frosted glass, he could make out a tall figure that seemed to shimmer like heat waves off summer pavement. The ring pulsed once, sending a jolt up his arm. Before he could decide whether to open the door, it dissolved. Not broke, not shattered, simply ceased to be, leaving a perfectly round hole in reality. Through it stepped a being that defied description, crystalline structures flowing like liquid, forming and reforming into roughly humanoid shape. "Timekeeper," it said in a voice like wind through crystal. "The Helix Dominion approaches. You must come with me now." Rowan stumbled backward, knocking over a shelf of pocket watches. "What? Who are you?" "I am Sentinel Thera of the Nexary Collective. Your grandmother was our ally. The ring you wear, it's not just jewelry. It's the last chronolith, and 3 species are coming to claim it." As if to punctuate her words, a deep thrumming filled the air. Through the workshop windows, Rowan saw lights descending from the clouds, too fast and too precisely to be aircraft. "They're here," Thera's crystalline form pulsed with urgency. "Choose quickly, Timekeeper. Trust your grandmother's judgment, or trust the ones who hunted her across the stars." The ring grew warm again, and Rowan felt a familiar presence. Just for a moment, he caught a glimpse of his grandmother's knowing smile. Outside, the lights were getting closer. "What happens if they get the ring?" he asked, already knowing he'd made his choice. "They remake reality itself," Thera said simply. "Your grandmother spent her life preventing that." Rowan grabbed his tool bag, "Some habits die hard," and nodded. "Then let's not waste any more time." Thera extended a crystalline hand. The moment Rowan took it, the ring flared to life. Reality twisted, and his workshop fell away. The last thing he saw was 3 massive ships breaking through the clouds, too late to stop what his grandmother had set in motion decades ago. As they fell through space between spaces, Rowan realized his quiet life of fixing broken timepieces was over. But perhaps that's exactly what the universe needed, someone who knew how to repair what was broken, before time itself ran out. The journey that would reshape the galaxy had begun, but its ending would depend on a humble clockmaker who had inherited far more than just a ring. He had inherited a legacy, and the time had come to learn what that truly meant. The void between realities shimmered like heat waves off summer pavement as Rowan and Thera materialized aboard what appeared to be a ship. His workshop tools clattered against crystalline floors that pulsed with inner light. The ring on his finger hummed in harmony with the surrounding technology, creating ripples of temporal energy that distorted the air around them. "Welcome to the resonance," Thera said, her crystalline form stabilizing into a more humanoid shape. One of the last Nexary vessels capable of navigating the spaces between time. Rowan steadied himself against a wall that felt both solid and fluid simultaneously. My grandmother, he managed, fighting down a wave of vertigo. She was like you. No, Thera's form shifted in what might have been amusement. Diana Pierce was entirely human. But she understood what the chronolith represented better than most of my people. She protected it for 30 years before passing it to you. Before Rowan could process this, alarms blared through the ship. Holographic displays materialized around them, showing 3 massive vessels emerging from what looked like tiers in space itself. Shadow Corp mercenaries, Thera growled, her crystalline body taking on darker hues. They're tracking the ring's temporal signature. The pursuing ships opened fire, but their energy weapons seemed to bend around the resonance, creating cascading waves of distorted spacetime. Rowan's ring pulsed in response, and suddenly he could see the patterns, flows of time and probability weaving around them like threads in an infinite tapestry. The ring, he breathed. It's showing me how they're tracking us. His hands moved instinctively, the same way they did when fixing particularly complex clockwork. The temporal patterns shifted, responding to his adjustments. Thera watched in fascination as Rowan's movements caused ripples in reality itself. Impossible. You're manipulating temporal frequencies without training. The rings never responded to anyone like this before. It's like clockwork, Rowan explained, continuing his subtle adjustments. Every piece affects every other piece. You just have to understand the relationships between them. The ring glowed brighter, confirming his intuition. A massive explosion rocked the ship. Through the viewports, Rowan saw a new vessel emerge, sleek and dangerous, bearing the insignia of the Helix Dominion. Its weapons weren't trying to bend time, they were trying to shatter it. The Dominion, Thera's voice held ancient pain. They believe the chronoliths are their birthright. They'll rewrite history itself to claim them. The ship shuddered under another temporal assault. Rowan felt reality trying to rewrite itself around them, but the ring protected them, maintaining their timeline like a bubble in a storm of changing possibilities. Your grandmother died preventing them from finding Earth, Thera continued, her hands dancing across control surfaces. She hid the ring's signature for decades, but now they know exactly where to look, Rowan finished. He studied the temporal patterns again, seeing how they connected, flowed, influenced each other. But what if we could hide in plain sight? Thera turned to him. What do you mean? In clockwork, sometimes the best way to fix a problem is to work with the mechanism, not against it. Rowan held up his hand, watching the ring pulse in time with the ship's systems. We're trying to block their sensors, but what if we amplified them instead? Gave them so many signals they couldn't possibly track the real one. That would require precisely manipulating temporal frequencies across multiple dimensions, Thera said. Even for the Nexary, that's. Rowan was already moving, letting instinct and experience guide him. The ring responded eagerly, its power flowing through him into the ship's systems. Reality rippled around them as temporal echoes began spawning in every direction, perfect copies of their temporal signature scattered across space and time. The pursuing ships faltered, their sensors overwhelmed by thousands of identical traces. But the victory was short-lived. A new alert sounded, and Thera's crystalline form darkened with concern. The Order of the Void, she whispered. They found us too. Through the chaos of temporal echoes, Rowan saw new ships emerging, organic-looking vessels that seemed to drink in light itself. The ring grew cold on his finger, responding to their presence with what felt distinctly like fear. They don't want to use the ring or claim it, Thera explained, plotting a desperate course through the temporal maze Rowan had created. They want to destroy it, and reality itself. They believe existence is a mistake to be corrected. The organic ships began launching what looked like living shadows, creatures that moved through the temporal echoes as if they were nothing more than mist. The ring's power surged, trying to protect them, but Rowan could feel the strain it was placing on both the artifact and himself. "We need to jump," Thera announced, her form pulsing with urgency. "But the temporal distortions are too chaotic. We'll never plot a safe course through them." Rowan looked at his grandmother's ring, understanding flowing through him with crystal clarity. "We don't plot through them," he said. "We become them." Before Thera could respond, Rowan pressed his hand against the ship's central control crystal. The ring flared with blinding light, and reality shifted around them. The resonance didn't so much jump through space as merge with the temporal echoes themselves, becoming one with the chaos Rowan had created. When existence stabilized, they were somewhere else entirely. Through the viewports, an impossible sunset painted crystalline rings in shades of purple and gold. They had arrived at the heart of Nexary space, but their pursuers were far from defeated. As Rowan collapsed from the strain, the last thing he saw was Thera's concerned face and the ring pulsing with warnings of greater challenges to come. The game of cat and mouse across time and space was just beginning, and the fate of multiple realities hung in the balance. Rowan awoke to the sound of crystalline chimes, finding himself in a chamber that seemed to be grown rather than built. The ring on his finger pulsed weakly, recovering from their desperate escape. Through towering windows, he watched ships of living crystal dance through the violet skies of the Nexary homeworld. "You're lucky to be alive," Thera's voice came from behind him. "No human has ever attempted to merge with temporal echoes before. Even your grandmother knew better than to try." Rowan sat up slowly, his head still spinning. "You knew her well." "I was her protector for 20 years, Thera's crystalline form shifted, revealing what might have been sorrow. "Until the Helix Dominion found us. She chose to return to Earth, to hide the ring where they'd least expect, with a simple clockmaker." Before Rowan could respond, the chamber's walls flickered with urgent light. Multiple holograms materialized, showing massive fleets approaching from different vectors. The Helix Dominion's mechanical armada, the Order of the Void's living shadows, and now a new force, ships that crackled with quantum energy. "The Quantum Syndicate," Thera explained grimly. "They believe they can harness the ring's power through pure mathematics. They're arguably the most dangerous of all." Rowan studied the tactical displays, seeing patterns emerge just as they did in complex clockwork. "They're not just coming for us," he realized. "They're positioning for war. Against each other, against the Nexary. Against everything," a new voice interrupted. Another crystalline being entered, this one ancient and elaborately formed. "I am Elder Ven of the Nexary Council. And you, Rowan Pierce, have brought catastrophe to our doorstep." The ring flared defensively, responding to the accusation. Rowan felt its power surge through him, showing him glimpses of possible futures, each more devastating than the last. "The ring doesn't cause catastrophe," he said quietly, understanding flowing through him. "It reveals what's already there. The greed, the fear, the hunger for power, they existed long before this. Precisely why it must be destroyed," Elder Ven declared. "The chronoliths were a mistake. They offer too much power, too much temptation." "You're wrong," Thera moved to stand beside Rowan. "The ring chose him for a reason. Show them." Rowan held up his hand, letting the ring's power flow naturally. Instead of manipulating time, he simply revealed it, showing them the intricate mechanisms of reality itself, the delicate balance of cause and effect. "It's like a perfect timepiece," he explained. "Every piece has its purpose, its place. The ring doesn't exist to change that. It exists to maintain it, to repair it when it's broken." The chamber erupted in chaos as proximity alarms blared. The three enemy fleets had arrived simultaneously, their weapons powering up. The Nexary capital's defenses activated, crystalline ships rising to meet the threat. "They'll destroy everything," Elder Ven warned. "Give us the ring. We'll keep it safe." But Rowan saw the truth in the temporal patterns. The Nexary were as tempted by the ring's power as anyone else. They simply hid it better. No one keeps power safe, he said, his grandmother's wisdom finally making sense. The only way to handle power is to understand its purpose. The ring pulsed in agreement, and suddenly Rowan saw what needed to be done. He grabbed Thara's hand, the contact sending cascades of temporal energy through both of them. The ring isn't a weapon, he declared. It's a tool. And like any tool, its power comes from how you use it. He reached out with the ring's power, not to attack or defend, but to reveal. Every ship in orbit, every being involved in the conflict, suddenly saw what he saw, the delicate interconnections of reality, the price of disrupting them. The Helix Dominion's fleet faltered as their commanders witnessed the devastation their temporal weapons would cause. The Order of the Void's shadows recoiled as they saw the life they sought to erase. The Quantum Syndicate's calculations crashed against the profound complexity of existence itself. But it wasn't enough. The ring's revelation had shaken them, but centuries of conflict and ideology couldn't be undone in a moment. The fleets regrouped, weapons charging. They'll still try to take it, Thara said, her crystalline form resonating with the ring's power through their joined hands. They'll never stop. Then we don't let them catch us, Rowan replied. He looked at Elder Ven. Your people created the chronoliths. Did you ever ask yourselves why they took the form of rings? The ancient Nexary's form rippled with surprise. To be worn, to be used. To complete a circle, Rowan corrected. The ring's power surged as understanding flowed through him. Every clock I've ever fixed works in cycles. Reality does too. We've been running from the past, but what we need to do is complete the circle. Before anyone could stop them, Rowan pulled Thara toward the chamber's center. The ring's power exploded outward, creating a sphere of pure temporal energy. Through it, Rowan saw where they needed to go, not forward or back, but through. Trust me, he asked Thara. Her crystalline form sparkled with what might have been laughter. You're as crazy as your grandmother. The enemy fleets opened fire as Rowan and Thara stepped into the temporal sphere. Reality twisted around them, but this time Rowan wasn't fighting it. He was working with it, like adjusting the gears of a complex watch. They vanished just as the chamber erupted in chaos, leaving Elder Ven and the Nexary Council to face the approaching armies. But Rowan knew this wasn't an ending, it was merely the next tick in a much larger mechanism. The ring had shown him where they needed to go, and why his grandmother had chosen him. Sometimes the only way to fix what was broken was to understand how it had been built in the first place. As they fell through the spaces between time, Rowan realized they weren't just running anymore. They were heading toward answers, toward the origin of the chronoliths themselves. And perhaps there, they would find a way to repair what centuries of conflict had broken. The temporal sphere deposited them on a world that defied comprehension. Ancient spires of quantum crystal stretched into a sky where multiple suns pulsed in impossible patterns. The ground beneath their feet shifted between solid matter and pure energy, responding to the ring's presence. Lyra, Thara breathed, her crystalline form resonating with the surrounding structures. The birthplace of the chronoliths. No one has set foot here in 10,000 years. Rowan studied the ruins around them, seeing them as he would a broken timepiece. Every structure, every pattern held purpose, meaning. The ring thrummed with recognition, its power growing stronger here at its source. Someone has, he said, pointing to fresh marks in the quantum crystal. And recently. They followed the trail through the ancient city, passing laboratories where reality itself had been studied and manipulated. The ring showed Rowan glimpses of the past, Nexary scientists working alongside other species, all united in pursuit of understanding time itself. We weren't always divided, Thara explained, touching a fallen crystal pillar. The Chronolith Project was meant to unite species, to help us understand and protect the fabric of reality itself. What changed? Power corrupts, a new voice answered. From the shadows emerged a figure Rowan recognized, the leader of the Quantum Syndicate. Unlike his followers, he appeared almost human, save for eyes that swirled with mathematical equations. Director Raven, Thurah's form shifted into a defensive stance. You followed us through the temporal wake. Obviously. Raven smiled, but it didn't reach his calculated eyes. Though I had help. His gaze shifted behind them. Elder Ven stepped into view, accompanied by crystalline guards. I'm sorry, Thurah. But the ring cannot remain free. Its power is too great. Rowan felt the ring pulse with warning as more figures emerged, representatives from each faction. The Helix Dominion's cybernetic general, the Order of the Void's Shadow Priestess, all converging on this ancient place. You're working together? Thurah asked, disbelief coloring her tone. Temporarily, Raven confirmed. Long enough to secure the ring. After that. He shrugged. Well, only one faction can truly control time itself. The ring's power surged through Rowan, showing him the truth. You're all wrong, he said. The ring doesn't control time. It's more like the regulator in a clock. It maintains balance, prevents damage. Damage like this? The Shadow Priestess gestured, and the air rippled. Rowan saw other timelines, realities where the factions had obtained chronoliths. Worlds unmade, civilizations erased, the very fabric of existence torn apart by temporal warfare. That's why my grandmother hid it on Earth, he realized. Not just to protect the ring, but to protect you from it. Enough philosophy, the Dominion General stepped forward, cybernetic weapons charging. Surrender the ring, or we'll take it from your corpse. But Rowan wasn't listening. The ring was showing him something else, the true purpose of this ancient city. Every structure, every pattern was part of a larger mechanism. Lyra itself was a machine, designed to work with the chronoliths. Thurah, he whispered, the entire city, it's a clock. Her crystalline form vibrated with sudden understanding. Of course. The ancients wouldn't just create the rings. They'd create a way to maintain them, to ensure they were used properly. The factions were closing in, but Rowan saw what needed to be done. Just as he would with any broken timepiece, he needed to understand the mechanism before attempting repairs. He pressed his hand against a crystalline pillar, letting the ring's power flow into the ancient systems. The city responded, quantum crystals lighting up in complex patterns. Reality itself seemed to hold its breath. Stop him. Raven ordered, but it was too late. The ring's energy connected with the city's systems, and suddenly Rowan understood everything. The chronoliths weren't meant to be used individually. They were parts of a whole, a system designed to maintain the integrity of spacetime itself. The rings are connected, he gasped. They're all connected. And they're still out there, scattered across reality, trying to do their job even though they're broken apart. Thurah grabbed his hand as temporal energy cascaded around them. What are you saying? I'm saying we've been looking at this wrong. The rings aren't weapons or tools of power. They're pieces of a broken system, and they want to be whole again. The city's quantum crystal spires pulsed with increasing energy as the ring resonated with ancient protocols. Through its power, Rowan saw the location of every remaining chronolith, scattered across dimensions, across time itself. But he also saw the price of repairing what was broken. The cost of making things right. They're going to try to stop us, he told Thurah as the faction leaders raised their weapons. They'd rather destroy everything than give up their chance at controlling it. Thurah's crystalline form sparkled with what might have been hope. Then what's the plan? Rowan looked at his grandmother's ring. No, not just a ring, but a key to something far greater. We complete the circuit, he said. We find the other rings and bring them home. All of them. The factions opened fire as Rowan activated the city's ancient systems. Reality twisted around them, preparing to send them when and where they needed to go. The ring's power protected them, but Rowan knew their next journey would be their hardest yet. Because fixing what was broken meant facing not just enemies, but the truth about the chronoliths themselves. And some truths, like some repairs, came with prices that changed everything. The quantum crystals of Lyra sang with ancient power as reality fractured around them. Rowan and Thera fell through time and space, guided by the ring's connection to its scattered siblings. Behind them, the faction leaders scrambled to pursue, but the city's reactivated systems made pursuit nearly impossible. 7. Rowan gasped as temporal visions flooded his mind. There are 7 rings left, counting this one. The others were destroyed in the wars. Thera's crystalline form pulsed with recognition. The original set had 13. But 7 might be enough to repair the system. They emerged in the ruins of a gas giant's moon, where the second ring lay hidden in a quantum vault. As Rowan worked to free it, his grandmother's ring showed him memories of the past, the chronoliths working in harmony, maintaining the delicate balance of reality itself. They're like the escapement in a clock, he explained as the second ring joined its sibling on his hand. They regulate the flow of time, prevent reality from unwinding. Each new ring they recovered added its power to the whole. On a desert world trapped in eternal twilight, they found the third ring buried in a temple of living mathematics. The fourth they rescued from a dying star's corona, where the Order of the Void had hidden it. But their enemies were learning, adapting. The Quantum Syndicate's ships ambushed them as they claimed the fifth ring from a dimension of pure thought. The Helix Dominion's temporal weapons nearly shattered their reality while they sought the sixth. Through it all, Rowan began to understand why his grandmother had chosen him. Not because he was special or powerful, but because he understood that complex systems required patience, care, and respect. Finally, they tracked the last ring to where it all began, Earth. Specifically, to his grandmother's grave. She kept 2 rings, Thera realized as they materialized in the moonlit cemetery. One to wear, one to hide. One to use, one to understand, Rowan corrected, kneeling by the familiar headstone. The rings on his fingers resonated with their hidden sibling. But they weren't alone. The faction leaders had caught up, bringing armies equipped with temporal weapons. Step away from the grave, Director Raven ordered, his mathematical eyes calculating odds. The power of a complete set of chronoliths cannot be trusted to a mere clockmaker. The Shadow Priestess glided forward. The rings must be destroyed. Existence itself is an aberration. The rings belong to the Dominion, the cybernetic general declared. We will restore order to reality. Elder Ven emerged last, his crystalline form dim with regret. Rowan, please. The Nexari created the chronoliths. We should be their guardians. But Rowan saw the truth in the temporal patterns surrounding them. You're all still thinking about control, he said, standing. But that's not what these rings are for. They're not about controlling reality, they're about maintaining it. Like the parts of a clock all working together. The 7 rings on his fingers pulsed in harmony as he reached down, letting their power connect with the 8th buried below. The very fabric of reality seemed to hold its breath. Your grandmother knew, Thera said softly. She knew it would take someone who understood maintenance over mastery. Care over control. The final ring rose from the earth, joining its siblings. The moment they connected, Rowan saw everything, all of time and space laid out like the intricate gears of a cosmic timepiece. The rings were never meant to be used as weapons, he announced as temporal energy cascaded around them. They're part of reality's support structure. Its maintenance system. Through the rings' combined power, he showed them what he saw, the delicate balance of existence itself, the constant need for small adjustments, tiny repairs that kept everything running smoothly. Time isn't a weapon to be wielded, he continued. It's a mechanism to be maintained. The faction leaders raised their weapons, but it was too late. The 8 rings had reconnected with Lyra's ancient systems, forming a network that spanned time and space. Reality itself was remembering how it was supposed to work. Temporal energy exploded outward, not destroying but repairing. Wars that had torn reality apart were gently mended. Weapons that could unmake existence lost their power as time itself was regulated once again. The rings lifted from Rowan's fingers, taking their place in a constellation of quantum crystal that would maintain temporal balance. But they left him with understanding, and a choice. The system needs a caretaker, Thera said. Someone to monitor, to make adjustments when needed. Rowan looked at his workshop key, then at the quantum crystals that now orbited Earth like a protective constellation. I suppose reality is just the biggest clock of all, he said. And every clock needs maintenance. The faction leaders found their weapons powerless, their temporal technologies reduced to nothing more than complex machinery. The rings had restored balance, removing the ability to weaponize time itself. What happens now? Elder Ven asked, his crystalline form reflecting the new constellation above. Rowan took Thera's hand, smiling as quantum crystals began growing around his workshop. Now we do what my grandmother taught me, we fix what's broken, maintain what works, and make sure the most important mechanism of all keeps running smoothly. The rings pulsed with approval as their network stretched across reality. They had found what they needed, not a wielder of power, but a caretaker who understood that the greatest force in existence wasn't control, but maintenance. High above, Earth's new quantum crystal constellation kept perfect time with the cosmos, maintained by a clockmaker who had inherited far more than just a ring. He had inherited the most important job in reality, keeping time itself running smoothly. And if sometimes clocks in his workshop ran a little too perfectly, or if customers occasionally caught glimpses of a crystalline figure helping with repairs, well, every good timepiece needs regular maintenance, even reality itself.